like there's like a big.
It's a big minion.
Right on.
All right.
You got some questions prepared?
No.
No? All right, so I'll tell you. Welcome everybody to the crypto panel. Glad you made it here to Anarchadelphia. Oh, okay. He wants. I'm waiting. Check 1, 2. Yeah, that's fine. All right. Can you guys hear me out there? You can hear? Good. All right, good. I'm waiting for this guy to get recorded. All right, we're good. All right, so we're kicking off a crypto panel. It doesn't look like we had anybody really prepare questions and topics, but I will start us off because I was just looking the other day at because we're trying to talk about the future of crypto. I think, right? Isn't that the title here? The future of crypto. And one of the things that I've been looking at, economically speaking, is my personal experience with the internet very much mirrors what is happening, in my opinion, with the crypto space. And one thing I'm noticing, I think, is that the crypto acceleration of adoption is happening almost twice as fast as the internet adoption. Now, if that's true, in 1975, give or take a year, you could call that the beginning of the internet. And it didn't really get popular, the 1 to 3%, what we call in software, the early innovator cycle, where you get through the early adopters and the innovators, which is the 1 to 13% range of adoption. The first 13% of your market, when they adopt, then you're out of the early adopter phase and you're into the beginning of the mass adoption phase. And that phase, so for the internet, it took from 1975 until roughly 1995 when AOL started sending out, hey, get online. So that's 20 years. And that's the early adopter phase. From 1995 to about 1999 was the mass adoption phase. Now, after the mass adoption phase in 99, we had a crash, a massive crash, the dot-com bubble, right? That burst 1999 through 2003, okay? So you got 20 years, followed by roughly 4 to 5 years, followed by roughly 3 years, okay? Now, if we take that math, if you take 2009 as the beginning, and you go to 2010, or 2019, this year, if crypto is indeed moving twice as fast, then we are just ending the early adopter phase. And I think most of us can probably agree we're still at the beginning, but this is the beginning of the mass adoption phase. And if we follow that math, what do you guys think? Is the next 2.5 years going to be the beginning of the mass adoption phase?
I think that depends. Can y'all hear me? No? So I think that depends. I think if you want to achieve mass adoption, and guys, correct me if I'm wrong, don't you think you need to use crypto in order for more merchants to accept it? That makes sense, right? So I think you definitely need to.
There you go. There you go. Hand it.
So you need to use your crypto, accept it as payment, and kind of have it circulate the market for it to truly catch on and for it to grow on a mass scale.
Erin Nakamoto, everybody. My name is Chuck Williams. On the end, we have Lea Thompson, and Kenn Bosack.
How goes it?
And here we have Kingsley Edwards and Alex. How do you say your last name? Scaggs? Scaggs. All right, Scaggs. Right on. So we're all in the crypto space. I've had various relationships with at least these two and this guy. We got YouTube videos, and we share a history of anti-government, I believe, like prisons and shit. We both had father experiences with our fathers being in prison.
We just met. We're best friends, though, already.
He's running a conference next month.
Next week.
Next week, right?
Yeah, actually in Philadelphia, Coinvention.
Yes. Check it out. So anyway, continuing the conversation. Lea, did you want to add to that?
So your question was just basically like, what does the next few years look like in terms of that mass adoption acceleration? Well, I think that what's been really interesting to watch during this bear market has been a lot of different real use case companies starting to build ways for people to use crypto in their life, just kind of like you're talking, like where, you know, you might not even necessarily, like these people might not even know that they're using blockchain, but it's making their lives better and it's helping to enhance that. And so I'm pretty excited for the bull run to see a lot of these companies that have been building and have been trying to grow to actually start to accelerate as we move into Bitcoin happening and so much that's happening in the next year or two in the crypto space.
Yeah, that makes me think, if you guys don't mind me jumping in, there's another historical piece of evidence that supports what Lea is saying in that in order for mass adoption to occur, there kind of has to be a shrinking phase where infrastructure development happens. And I'm really excited about one of the projects that I'm working on, little plug, Equistart, which is indeed one of those infrastructure things. I believe that there's going to be an entrepreneurial explosion that's happening. It's already happening. Who wants to raise a business? Who in here wants to start a business? You got a business idea, you got something, you already got it rolling. I'd say about 50, 40% of this room alone wants to start or is starting a business. Would you guys nod in agreement? So given that, we need these tools to enable the speed of business, to get them spun up, to distribute ownership, to get investment. That's what Equistart's essentially about. So if you want to spin up an LLC in minutes and get that rolling in the jurisdiction of your choice and raise funds by tokenizing your business, that's something that Equistart can do. But I'm only plugging that because that's an infrastructure development that I think is one of the pieces necessary in order for all of us to become owners of our future.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing behind the scenes and is just these companies, like, you know, they haven't stopped working. You know, the reality is we see the market, you know, it goes up and it comes down, and yeah, that's the market. It's a natural market movement. You know, if a market goes from 1,000 to 20,000, people are going to sell at 20,000. They want to make their money. You know, and it's going to go down. It's a kind of a catalyst effect, but that doesn't mean we stopped working behind the scenes. Actually, you know, people just keep putting money and keep working and working and working.
Yeah, I guess to farther touch on like how you were talking about the internet's exponential curve as to Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies mass adoption. You know, you're starting to see, you know, back like you said, you know, the earlier days, the roads to the internet got more convenient. More people started using it. More businesses started using it. We're starting to see, you know, the same thing where you had your first cell phone. It didn't have Facebook on it. Didn't even have a browser. You could barely, when the internet first hit your smartphone, you could barely surf the web and be on a phone call at the same time. Samsung just released a phone with Bitcoin wallet built into the operating system. A lot of these companies, Exodus from HTC, a bunch of different phones. I have a blockchain OS phone from Siren Labs. They're building this technology into the thing that's in your hand the same way they did with the internet to introduce it. And like what Erin was saying, the more we use it, the more incentive we have for these businesses to use it. But Mark said we need the infrastructure, the roads to be built for that all to work out. And those roads were built and they were adopted, I believe, simultaneously from corporations and the customers and people independently as the roads got built for the internet. As we see these things being built for Bitcoin, we'll see that, you know, that user flow base, the corporate interest, all kind of, you know, at the same time get involved as those roads are built. You open up your Samsung phone, you can use tap and pay. So more people accept it, more people use it because it's conveniently there in your hand. As you're going to start see that same option be there for Bitcoin, and more people may opt to that than PayPal. You know, show of hands if anybody who's had issues with PayPal, Venmo, or Facebook sending money to a friend. Yeah, it sucks. Yeah. They charge you to give you a hassle to use their services. I have not had any issues sending Bitcoin to anybody ever. It gets there. And I can choose how fast I want it to go. If I want to send a very, really, really low transaction fee, maybe it'll take a little bit longer to get to you. Or if I need to get it to you right away, then I can just set the transaction fee a little higher, but at least it's up to me.
I'm just curious, how many of you think Bitcoin and crypto is a store of value? Raise your hands. How many of you have used crypto in a transaction? Oh.
Nice.
Okay. Yeah, that's
It's a
awesome.
high percentage.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that is.
Can I comment?
Yeah.
So, as you were talking, Ken, it reminded me that there is that phase that happened in 1999 to 2003 that kind of triggered that .com bubble burst. It's what I call the regular apocalypse, and that is
the regulators come in. They saw the internet happening, right? It took them until 1999 to say, "Oh my God, what the fuck? This fucking." They were like AT&T and Verizon and all these like WorldCom, all these phone companies wanted to charge you by the minute for your internet use, and they were going to the regulators to get these laws passed. And that's why all these .com bubbles were burst in a lot of cases, because people were afraid that the government was going to come in and shut everything down, and so everybody pulled their money out. They're like, well, they haven't figured it out yet, so we're just going to wait. That's what's happening right now. There is a regular apocalypse happening, and some congresspersons get it, but many don't. Many just don't get it, and they're tied into the fear-mongering that they're so used to dishing out. So we have to go through this, I think, in order to do this.
Yeah, exactly like, let me use that thing.
Sure.
Yo. All right, cool.
Exactly like he's saying, what were you saying? Damn it.
Regular apocalypse.
Thank you. God damn it, man, I smoke so much weed. The apocalypse is happening. We're in a state of Bitcoin prohibition right now. We're in a state of crypto prohibition. We have people moonshining Bitcoin. I know a lot of people that do OCT trades themselves through their peers because they don't meet the qualifications of KYC to buy Bitcoin. So regulation is, kind of creating a black market, a third-party market, making crypto more peer-to-peer. I love regulations. I hope they regulate Bitcoin to a point that people choose to go the more anarchist route of acquiring it. I'll go to my neighbor and buy Bitcoin instead of going to Coinbase because they know my identity. I don't want that. Exactly. So where we're seeing this start to go is we're going to see people opt out of the monopoly of fiat and opt into the plan B of Bitcoin. And as those people opt in and opt out, it's beautiful.
I think what's important too here. He's right. It really is beautiful, and I think what's important here too is to realize that there is Bitcoin, but there's also like MakerDAO, and they are pegged to the dollar, and you can use that.
Did you see the lottery they're doing?
Where is that? What
Like lottery. What's the website? I forget. Anyway, yeah, it is interesting. And I actually used to be
Well, share with the audience. I don't know if everybody understands. What is
Yeah,
this
stable
about?
coins.
yeah. So I was going to go into. So stable coins is basically has a value to it. Pegged to the dollar. MakerDAO is interesting because they do it with it actually not being backed up by actual U.S. dollars. It's backed by crypto. There's whatever their algorithm.
It's a basket
That's
of crypto, right?
Yeah. Which is really cool. Other ones like USD Tether and other. Supposedly they tell us are backed by U.S. dollars in a bank account, but obviously that's
They just publicize that they're not backed by
yeah.
the dollar.
So they're
Sketch.
very sketch, and you just don't know what's going on there. But I actually used to be against stable coins, but now I think they're interesting because at the very least it provides an off ramp for people that want to participate in cryptocurrency without participating in the volatility can have access to that. So.
So in this regular apocalypse that I think that's going to be coming, I think over the next 2.5 years, I think by the early 2020s, we will see some kind of decisions. And the SEC actually just last week approved the first crypto ETF. Now it's still restricted to accredited investors, right? But but it's moving. Like these are the incremental movements that kind of need to happen in order for that mass adoption to happen. People are going to accept it because this tidal wave cannot be stopped. So moving on. So I'd like to move a little bit into the future. Like maybe we can offer some thoughts. Like all of us are sitting in I think I would say privileged positions, like being like in the eye of the hurricane that is kind of crypto. I mean, on the crypto show, I feel so privileged to be interviewing all kinds of people who support the movement of cryptocurrency, and they're all thinking from this global scale. Nobody I'm talking to who really supports this stuff is in favor of a strong dollar or a strong lira or whatever. They're not worried about the currencies of the world. They're really worried about human value and being able to exchange that as freely as possible. What do you guys think about that? I'd like to hear from Lea.
All right. Perfect. So I just want to make sure I catch the question totally right. So you're like the role of regulation on how, like in implementation of like the direction of where crypto's going, and like the role regulation will play in that,
and the perceptions of people who support cryptocurrency in that environment. Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that with obviously regulations, that's something that's a big topic right now. We had all those big IRS letters come out this year, and everyone's like, "What's going on?" It's going to be something that we will continue to work through. I think that there are obviously a lot of decentralized exchanges out there, which are becoming even more popular, which are becoming even more valuable as people are starting to worry. I mean, we had Binance, now they're like, hey, U.S. customers, can't do this and that. And so we're going to see more and more of that. And that's where I think the market always decides, right? And so they want to regulate this. Okay, well, then maybe the market will come up with even better solutions that even work for that.
Yeah, and you reminded me a conclusion that I've made. I made this a few years ago. America's going to be last to the party. We will be last to the crypto party here in America. All the other countries of the world, they're going to get it first, especially third world countries. Even these refugee camps are going to have crypto before us. I kid you not.
I agree. I think that a lot of these, even these island countries, what are they called? They're accepting crypto more, and they're at a scale where they can kind of tinker and mess with things as far as the government's concerned. And we're seeing a lot of money move over from the U.S. and China and all these more regulated states to countries like that.
I mean, there's a giant brain drain happening in the U.S. Companies and developers are leaving the U.S. to build these companies in another country. So we will be last because we're already leaving.
Yeah.
The best developers we have in the U.S. are already gone because they're already working on projects in other countries.
Look, if anybody's looking for a career opportunity and you're technically inclined, right now today the statistic is 19 for every developer, every blockchain developer that currently exists in the world, there are at least 19 jobs for that individual, and they're being poached. If you get a job for 6 figures, you might get a job for twice that, and then another job for twice that in 2 years, because people are poaching and poaching and poaching just because there's such a scarce supply of blockchain developers. So Kingsley Academy is a place to go. It's the only accredited institution, regionally accredited institution. Not a plug, I'm not affiliated, but they are offering blockchain training. Also recommending Andreas Antonopoulos, Mastering Bitcoin. Anything Andreas Antonopoulos recommends, pick that up, learn it. He's an authoritative source for me, and I think all of us.
And for the love of God, get to a freaking Bitcoin meetup. If you have not been there, what are y'all doing? Yeah. And if there isn't one in your city, start one.
Yeah. Indeed.
I think that Bitcoin meetups are easily I think it's going to be the most important aspect of reaching mass adoption, because like I said in my talk yesterday morning, building community is the most important thing. So for me, my fiance really wants to kill me because we'll go out to a restaurant or especially we went to Miami for Miami Bitcoin conference, and we're out to dinner, and it was Josh Sigurdson and myself and Kingsley and Josh's girlfriend, and we're all just talking to our waiter being like, hey, you don't have Bitcoin? Oh my God, start a wallet, I'll send you some $10. And Josh was like, I'll send you $10. And the waiter ended up loving us at the end of the night. And my fiance wanted to kill me because I was giving away all of our money.
Yeah, for the record, it's not because she was educating people, it's because she keeps giving people our Bitcoin.
Well, it is a store of value, at least. And as you're talking, it reminds me, and I really want to share this with the audience, communities are it. Communities are how movements happen. And if you can encourage a community, your friends, your family, that's the number one way to get something adopted. If you really want people to share, all you have to say, look, it's valuable to me, I use it for these reasons, I like it for these reasons, and I want you to use it too. I went on a camping trip, just a quick short story. I went on a camping trip with a bunch of guys. It's not easy, and these guys, they hate that I'm an anarchist. They hate a lot of the whole principles, and they think cryptocurrency is a fad. How many people are old enough to remember when the internet was just a fad to most people? Yeah? Look at this. At least 80% of the room, 75 to 80% of the room, agrees that the internet was a fad. Here we are, I don't know how many years later, decades later, internet is a fundamental institution of the globe. the cryptocurrency industry is not going to be known as such. It's just going to be a way that people can exchange value on systems and applications. And cryptocurrency is just going to enable it in a way where you can be anonymous if you want to, or you can have a hard contract that will be more enforceable than any legal contract, which has been demonstrated in multiple international institutions as of today, across the board. I mean, there are Ethereum contracts that have been challenging existing parity legal contracts that were written in the Commonwealth of the UK, in Hong Kong, and the Ethereum contract won, basically establishing law, precedent law, that Ethereum contracts will be better enforced by the legal institutions of all the Commonwealth, which includes the UK, Australia, Hong Kong, and many other places. So this is happening, and it's not going to turn around. So that's what I see in the future.
I think with that, like, you know, he brings up a great point, but I think it's important for you guys to understand a little bit of why. And we should talk about like the open source and what it means to write a smart contract and being able to see, you know, the value propositions and interacting in the, you know, in the code to come up with a conclusion that is conclusive.
State it in the form of a question. Pose a question for the group.
You know, I guess what do you guys love about the open sourceness, you know, of the blockchain industry? And
Auditability.
Auditability. Yeah.
I can audit the code. I mean, I can teach myself exactly what I need to know what I'm looking at, if it is or isn't a farce, if it is manipulable or if it isn't, if it's malicious or not. I could look at the contract and understand it before I sign it, unlike agreeing to terms and services for fucking Facebook. You know, they might write it out right there for you to read, but go ahead and read it, see if you understand it. It might as well be a smart contract. So these contracts are auditable and they're forkable. If I don't agree with that contract, you created it, you put in all that effort, it works. I'm going to change the one thing I don't like about it, and that's the contract we're going to use, and it will work.
But it's also important because, you know, things, especially with Bitcoin, things are auditable. It's important to, well, you know, if you care about your privacy, to figure out ways to hide your identity when you're doing transactions. So, you know, I've done a lot of transactions with very wealthy people in the crypto space, and they, you know, you'll see that their wallet, hey, they got 20 million here, 100 million here, or whatever. So, you know, then that's why, you know, we like also things like Monero and other privacy coins too. But, and hopefully, do you guys think that Bitcoin will eventually, I know there's, you know, obviously talks of implementing some privacy features of Bitcoin, but yeah.
Wallet.
Right.
Well, I mean, they exist to a certain degree, and I want to hear your answer to the previous question, but I do like privacy, and that's one of the reasons I like Dash. Dash has, Bitcoin has CoinJoin. You can do that separately. It's a separate service where you mix coins and then you can privatize your Bitcoin holdings. Dash has that same kind of functionality built onto the protocol, which makes it a little bit more secure when you do the mixing. So, but back to, I'm sorry, Alex's question. I want to hear responses over here.
So what do I like about the open source part of
Or
crypto? Of
or
smart
other
contracts?
properties?
what do you value it?
Why do you value the crypto?
Why do you value the open source?
Oh, the open source trait.
What's so important about it?
I mean, I really like the fact, like kind of what Ken said was, if you don't like something about the code, you can duplicate that and do it your way.
Imagine if we got our own Facebook, like,
Right.
Float.
Like Float.
Like Float.
Shameless plug.
That's
Download
the best
Float.
comparison is Facebook and like being able to see the algorithm that they write.
Oh, sorry.
That they write to. I was just projecting my voice. I was like, you can probably hear me anyway.
But the beauty of also smart contracts is you can now get married on the blockchain through a smart contract. You can record a birth. So instead of giving your child a slave security number, you can actually record your child's birth on blockchain.
I'm going to one-up you. You can do any legal contract.
Yeah.
There is an open source platform. God, I forget the name of it. Oh, no. But there is an open source platform that is standing by, ready for you to convert any legal contract into a smart contract that will automatically execute anything that can be automatically executed within that contract.
I can't wait for one day for the DMV to not exist and I can just use the blockchain.
Yep.
Fuck the DMV.
And voting. Voting is going to be huge. The idea of being able to vote, prove that you voted, being able to see your vote, and then prove that everybody else has the vote and that they didn't make up the votes?
I disagree with that. I don't know. Well, I mean, voting, I mean, you're still implementing democracy, right? So it's still like 51% versus the 49.
But we need like
Oh, we're not getting
corporate
into
voting or
politics.
whatever. Yeah, it's not about really politics. It's about
Okay.
voting or whatever.
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah.
voting
Okay.
for lunch
Audit
or
your
whatever.
vote. Imagine if you could audit the election yourself and count the votes yourself and prove where those votes came from yourself.
Well, see, that's what we're doing with Equistart. I mean, when you own shares in a company, you get voting rights, right? And those rights are weighted by your level of investment. And we're going to do that on the blockchain, on the Ravencoin blockchain, and the EOS blockchain, and probably the Dash blockchain with Equistart. And you'll just have a super clean interface, and you won't even know that you're dealing with the cryptocurrency. This is what I'm talking about with infrastructure development.
So Chuck,
Can
should
you
we
talk
buy
about
Ravencoin?
security and decentralization and why it's so important? Because you talk about how great it is, but people don't understand why it's distributed and why.
I get it. Well, do you mind if I let Leah finish, and then we'll move into security? Okay.
No, I mean, I was just gonna say that I think this all like is coming down to this idea of something that's trustless and how revolutionary that is for our entire society, and how you don't have to trust that middleman, you don't have to trust that bank to know that that's gonna come through. You don't have to do this. There's actual transparency. Sorry if I'm blowing up the mic here.
No, I don't know if it's you or not. The trustlessness, well, that's a good segue into security. And a lot of people think, well, so let me put it this way. First off, in Bitcoin, that SHA-256 algorithm that does the proof of work, how many of you know that used to be called military-grade encryption? Straight out of the NSA. We got about 10-15% of the room. Yeah, that's a fact. As a matter of fact, there are people in the government who knew that if this gets out, well, shit, then we won't be able to track people as much as we'd like. We won't be able to follow people's interactions. We won't be able to create those connection webs if they can anonymize themselves with this encryption. And this is one of the fundamental uses of this thing. You can finally be free of those connections. You can detach, you can exit, and keep what you want private. And that's very fundamental. That proof of work algorithm is just replicated in so many different ways. So this is one of the crazy scientific things that I got out of reading the Bitcoin white paper and doing some research. Every single wallet that you create on the Bitcoin, which is also created with every single transaction that you do, because the transaction will go out and you'll come back with change, and that often creates a new wallet. Every single one of those is mathematically collision proof to the tune of about the same as finding a particular atom in the observable universe. That's the likelihood that any two wallets will be colliding, that they'll be the same address. That's not going to happen.
But what's it backed by?
Right. Well,
That's the
all
question.
value is belief. You know that. So yes, the Bitcoin itself is only backed by who wants to use it. Do you value the privacy? Do you value the trustlessness? Do you value the opportunity to send digital value to any other human on the planet at any time with 6 confirmations? Or, in 3 seconds if you do it on the Dash blockchain.
The value also comes from the network. It's it's the strongest network in the world. There is no stronger mass. Yeah, exactly. It's the strongest computer in the world, and that is valuable. So the way it works is they have a bunch of nodes, and and Bitcoin has the most nodes. It has the most hashing power, and that is value.
Can I jump in here?
Yeah.
So a lot of you are probably thinking, well, what if the internet goes away?
Yeah.
Right? That's the first question that I get, right? What if the internet goes away? All right, first off, if the internet goes away, we have bigger problems than your lost Bitcoin, okay? Just keep that in mind. Secondly, every single node, of which there are many, many thousands, every single node has a copy of your wallet. They have a copy of every single transaction. That's what the blockchain is. Every node on the Bitcoin network has to be verifying every single transaction every 10 minutes. And every 10 minutes, all those thousands of nodes must agree. These are the transactions? Yes, these are the transactions. The crowd of nodes will agree. And any one of those can restart the whole system. And even beyond that, you don't have to have the network in order to conduct a transaction. There are wallets available today where you can do straight peer-to-peer transactions without the network and then sync up to the network later on, because your two wallets have enough information within your wallet to conduct those transactions. It's a very simple process. So don't worry about that. Like, it's not going away as long as humans exist.
And people are also coming up with interesting technologies where I think they've broadcasted Bitcoin transactions over radio signals, and they're using satellites now. So people are already coming up. Yeah, people are already coming up with things. So if the internet does go, well, as we know it right now, disappears, we'll have backups to be able to still send transactions.
Vin Armani created coin text, right? So you can send crypto over SMS messaging.
As a matter of fact, if you follow, there's a Bitcoin Cash. There's been many clones of that are happening now. There's Dash Text and there's Bitcoin Cash Text, and they're very popular. You don't even need a smartphone these days in order to conduct that. Now, getting to the future of this, like, these are just infrastructure pieces, right? We're all seeing these little infrastructure pieces. We're early adopters and innovators. These two are building, well, I'm building stuff. You guys are innovating and sharing and spreading the message. You're trying to build conferences. I don't know what you're into, Lea, but I want to find out. Will you share a little bit? Because you're the only person up here I don't know what you're into.
Yeah, so I got involved in crypto a few years ago, actually through the Steam blockchain. I found out about it and just realized that I could earn money somehow for posting like ukulele videos I was making, and I was like, what is this? And so I kind of call it my gateway drug to crypto, because then I was like, okay, well, where's this money coming from? How is it generated? What does it work? What are these keys? And it just kind of took me down from there. And so I'd say, like, I'm definitely, just, full disclaimer, not one of the most technical people in this room, but this. Right, and so, but from the kind of the social side and like the implications that I see that this technology can have in our society, like, that's what gets me so excited. So,
I see decentralization as its own security. Problems with PayPal and Venmo and issues like that. Decentralization doesn't conform to regulations. We're at an anarchy conference. Can I see show of hands of people who give a shit about regulations? Yeah, not one, maybe one guy. He's working on something that deals with he has to care. But I mean, as an individual, I could care less about regulations. I really don't care, and I ignore them, and I don't pay my taxes. Fuck them. No. It's no.
I just want to let you know that
I would love to see regulations at McDonald's stopping me from buying 2 Big Macs because I'm already overweight.
You can go to any Vegas. You can go to any Vegas casino and put all your life savings on red or black, and the SEC isn't going to pound on your door, So, I mean, really, who cares what you can put in Bitcoin?
So Bitcoin's decentralization won't conform to regulations, and that is its own security. You don't have to worry about any government imposing its perspective or point of views onto your means of transactions. You can now send money to North Korea if you want to buy an anime from a guy who created it. Can't do that with PayPal. Good luck getting Wells Fargo to buy you that. It ain't going to work. The decentralization aspect of it is the most secure aspect for me. I don't see a consensus going to stop me from sending Bitcoin to anybody anytime soon.
So going all the way back to the idea of mass adoption. So first of all, I want to say that I have never experienced such a mass awakening when it comes to somebody in crypto or getting people involved in crypto. Right now it's crazy. Yesterday or 2 days ago, I went to the post office, which I fucking dread. Does anyone else dread going to the fucking post office? Oh my God. Every time I just walk in, I'm like, get me the fuck out of here. Anyway, so I go to the post office, and luckily there are no lines, and the guy gets to me really fast. And he goes, are you in Bitcoin? And I'm like, am I recognized right now? And I said, yeah, how do you know? And he goes, oh, your phone has a Bitcoin B on it, because I have a thing on the back that has a Bitcoin B. And he goes, you gotta tell me how I can get into Bitcoin. He goes, I read it's gonna take off in the next 30 days. It's gonna pop off. And he goes, I can't, I don't know how to do it. He goes, I joined Coinbase and I can't figure out how to set up my account. And I said, well, I was like, Coinbase is the easiest thing to use at the moment. I wrote him down my information. And I said, but do you know the ways, you can get Bitcoin? He says, well, yeah, you buy it. And he goes, but it's expensive. And I said, it can be. But did you guys know that you could buy $10 worth of Bitcoin? You can buy any dollar amount worth of Bitcoin. If you have an extra $10 of a week, buy $10 worth of Bitcoin. So that was one way. And the second thing he said to me was, oh, I also read you can mine it, which is also true. You can also mine Bitcoin. That's an option. But now there's a third option, and this is my favorite. So there's a website. It is called lolly.com.
I love Lolly.
And so how many of you shop online for goods and services? I do. I constantly shop online. Yeah. So, okay, when Amazon Prime came out, I was like, I never have to go grocery shopping again. So I buy pretty much everything online nowadays. And so Lolly is partnered with over 400 companies: Walmart, Best Buy, Groupon, Priceline, Hotels.com, Cheap Air. Yep, they just hooked up with Airbnb, Petco, Postmates even. So basically how it works is you buy the goods and services that you would buy anyway, and you earn Bitcoin on the back end. All you have to do is just click a browser extension, and you earn. I've earned over $300 worth of crypto just from buying stuff online. So check out lolly.com, and if you want my referral code where we both get $10, hit me up.
Infrastructure is getting built. Let's bring it back to Pat's question about security and decentralization, and I think this is the fundamental elements of why Bitcoin takes off. I think we should go down the line, get all of us speaking, and
I think security just turns people off. It scares the shit out of them to be their own security guard at their own bank. When you tell people be your own bank, that also comes with being your own security guard at the front door, the own cashier. You're the bank manager, owner, operator. Everything's on your shoulders, and people aren't used to that. Everybody in this room has a financial scapegoat. They're used to it.
But it's no different than having cash in your wallet, though. So you
Right.
just, actually it's better than having cash in your wallet.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I was just going to say, what do we have? We have 5 minutes? Okay, maybe 4 now. What do you guys think of as far as the market's concerned? Because obviously BTC dominance right now is high again. And typically, like in a bull market, we'll see a lot of people rushing into BTC, and then a lot of the speculators going, oh, I can pick up this penny coin here, penny coin there, whatever. So do you think we're going to see that again in the next year or two, or do you think it's going to be BTC all the way?
So yeah, I'm definitely not a Bitcoin maximalist. I love Bitcoin. Dash, my current favorite, is a copy of Bitcoin. I'm familiar with Ravencoin, which is also a copy of Bitcoin with amendments. Same with Dash. Doge is, Litecoin is. A lot of the proof of work coins, open source, public open source, censorship resistant. Those are the ones that I like, not Ripples. But remind me your question.
Oh, you think we'll see a cycle back into the alts?
Cycle back into the alts. Yeah, I think we will. You can look at the charts and you can look at the Bitcoin dominance, and there's a clear trend line on the way down for the peaks of Bitcoin dominance. I fundamentally believe, as a software developer, there will always be competition. There is not one to rule them all. Bitcoin maximalists, you can have your store of value, but if people aren't using it, it's not going to hold up its value. It's just not going to be usable. I paid in Dash over there at Mark's table. Mark likes Dash, and it's just so simple and easy. Dash is trying to be a medium of exchange, and that's why I like it. But I think you need the three main properties of money in order to be successful. You do need store of value. You do need fungibility. Well, that's not it. Store of value, unit of account, which is hard. That's the last one that comes, and medium of exchange. If you can get medium of exchange going, givecards.dash.org. You can spend your money. You want to be able to spend your money wherever you can. You have to figure out local Bitcoins. You have to find people in your life. That's how you get adoption. Will you take it? I ask everybody that I pay, will you take Bitcoin or Dash? I'm still getting 100% no right now, but I still keep asking. And especially my friends. Now, for my friends, I give it away. And I'll say, watch it. Let's see what happens. Come back to me in 5 years.
It's easier when they have skin in the game.
Exactly.
I agree. Or actually, you can go because you're in front of me.
Ladies first.
Oh, thanks. So yeah, I do believe that we'll see money flood into the alts. I don't see a way out of that. I would stay away from the shit coins though. And if you don't stay away from the shit coins, make your money, pull out, and then you're good.
Yeah.
And kind of something you said about giving Bitcoin to your friends. I have to say that's been one of my favorite ways to get people involved. Is like, oh, it's your birthday. Here's a paper wallet. Here's $20 worth of Bitcoin. And now they're like, well, what do I do with this? I'm like, haha, let's talk about that. So it's
The gift of a burden.
But in terms of altcoins, like obviously, Bitcoin is our king, but he's not the sexiest. He's kind of our old, slow king. But, the altcoins, there's so many potential for real use cases like we've talked about today that are building things that we're going to be able to, people will use in their real life, and
All the games coming out on this game project.
And speaking of games, we actually have the co-founder of Splinterlands here today, which is one
Shout out to Splinterlands.
Woo! Which is one of the top dApps in the entire blockchain space and an amazing game. And what's cool...
Yeah,
From
that's a Philly
Philly.
guy right there.
And I mean, the gaming industry is huge. I'm not a gamer, but like it's massive, right? And so these people start understanding the value of like, oh, I can actually own the assets. I can own my cards. I can earn crypto in these tournaments, and they're just living their life playing games, and then they're getting into the world of crypto through that. So there's so many moments like that. And Pat is telling us that it is time. So
All right, I'm just going to wrap up with, we'll see these cycles continue repeatedly from, fluctuations of Bitcoin dominance to, shit coins getting some of the market value. I think we could all agree Bitcoin has the worst marketing team in crypto. Hands down. The worst marketing. Yeah, you want some of this free stuff? Like, that is the worst marketing. You're giving somebody something that you value and they give zero value to. They're going to lose it. They're going to get upset when it goes up and they forgot that they had it. They're going to give them a bad it's just one of those things that I kind of stopped doing that. You used to see me do it on Facebook, Twitter all the time, give everybody Bitcoin. Nobody anymore.
All right, well, we're going to wrap it up. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
One more time for our awesome crypto panel, guys. All right, so our next speaker wrote one of my favorite books that I think I've ever read. Some of you might have it, some of you might have heard of it. It's called Understanding Our Slavery. He is hiding in the back, finishing up his presentation, and he will be up shortly in the next 5 minutes to teach you all about your slavery. So stay tuned. All right, he's coming? Yeah. Drop the chairs. Over by the audio shit.
This is HDMI out.
Etienne de la Boitie, and I'm the founder of the Art of Liberty Foundation, and we're a startup public policy organization that promotes voluntary free market solutions over monopoly government. I'm also the author of a book called Understanding Our Slavery that exposes how intergenerational organized crime controls the government and the media. And the book uses visualizations, media ownership charts, infographics, and historical photos to expose the hidden connections between the shady banks, Beltway bandits, monopoly media companies, and 24 new media companies dominating search, social media, retail, meetups, and comment posting, among others, on the control of perception tactics on the DARPA internet. But tonight, I'm here to tell you a story about how, as far as I know, I was stumbled into the closest thing to a takeover of the White House, and stumbled across the Secret Service's biggest secret. And so, a quick background on me: I'm a tech and media entrepreneur. I'm a consultant, board director, operating executive. In my youth, I worked at one of the big four think tanks. I ran a national third-party political campaign. And I live outside of Washington, D.C. until very recently in Ashburn, Virginia. And so I've got a chance to see politics kind of up close and personal. And whenever protests come to protest our organized crime government, I always like to show up and try and cause as much trouble as I can. And today I want to tell you the story of when the veterans marched on Washington, D.C. in 2013 after the Obama administration locked them out of their own memorials, an event called the Million Veterans March on the Memorials. And the Uniformed Secret Service, the Park Police, and Washington, D.C. Metro Police had never really encountered such open hostility before, and never before has the organized crime government ever demonstrated their callous disdain for the military. And so before we get into how the veterans shut down Washington, D.C., and the media didn't tell you about it, and the big secret about the Secret Service, we have to kind of set the stage so everybody understands what was going on in October of 2013. And so let me take you back. And so back in October of 2013, the Obama-Clinton administration had been exposed as kind of liars and criminals. They were 6 months into their second term, and they hadn't ended any of the wars they promised to end. They had openly given the banks $20 trillion through the TARP and the TALF and the bailouts, even though 90% of the country was against it. They had just lost $500 million from a failed green energy company tied to the Clinton Obamas called Solyndra. And the organized crime government was forcing everyone into a healthcare scheme where they could not even produce a website for $500 million from a company run by one of Michelle Obama's Princeton classmates. So the government was kind of I don't want to say they were kind of feeling it right now, and the tide had changed, and we had come up to the national debt ceiling in October of 2017. And back to 2013, and back then it stood at $17 trillion, and the Republicans were pretending to be fiscally conservative, while the Democrats were pretending the lights are going out in Washington, D.C. And the quote-unquote debt ceiling, for anybody that's been paying attention, is much like the Social Security lockbox or the Bill of Rights. They're just kind of rules that apply to you, but don't apply to everything else, and it can be discarded at any time. And the debt ceiling had been ignored dozens and dozens of times since 1917, and so nobody was really paying any attention to Washington, D.C. And so nobody was paying any attention to Washington, D.C., and so Washington, D.C. decided to make it hurt. And so we're going to inconvenience the population in ways that get them mad and get them to clamor to turn the government back on. And so some of the things they did were just ridiculous. They turned off the panda cam at the National Zoo, as if the money for the panda cam was going to be, too much money for, them to be able to cover in the shortfall. But the main thing they did is they spent money that they didn't have to inconvenience the veterans. And so if anybody that's been to Washington, D.C. knows the World War II memorials, the war memorials, they're essentially kind of like open air. There's nobody really has to be there. But because they wanted to have everybody agitating, they spent money to erect barricades, these heavy steel frame barricades around the monuments. They locked the monuments out. The veterans said, we're not going to have any of this. I think they tagged it onto like an already scheduled protest for something else, but they very, very quickly came to Washington, D.C. in force, along with a rally of truck drivers called the Ride to the Constitution. And since they were going to come and protest the organized crime government, I was going to be there too. And so I went down with my 2 kids, and we took my 60-foot sign. And for any of you who have read my book, you've seen this, and the recipe for the book is in the book. But the sign is kind of a Banksy-esque attempt to summarize our quote-unquote political problems in the shortest number of words, and then take that phrase and make it as big as humanly possible in a way that is impossible for the media to ignore, except the media ignores it all the time. This is probably the most censored sign in protest history. And so even though this sign is the biggest sign that's ever been, any protest I've ever been, it's always the biggest sign. And even though it's been photographed thousands and thousands of times, it never appears in social media or on the news or anything like that. This is when we had the sign out at the Women's March on Washington, where we had set up on the dais between the Capitol and the Capitol reflecting pool before the march even got started, so that everybody streaming out of the Union Station Metro, which is the main metro stop in Washington, D.C., it's a river of people, just a river of people going right in front of us. 5 to 10 people at any time have stopped, got out of the line. They're taking pictures. I've had over a dozen members of the press come up to me, interview me, ask me what the sign's all about. I explain it to them. They take pictures of the sign, or they write down all my information. It's never appeared in print. And so we took it. So my boys at that time were 9 and 11 years old. And the first thing that we did is we stretched it out. So the protest is going on at the World War II Memorial, and we stretch it out on the fence around the Washington Memorial, okay, facing the World War II Memorial, so that everybody, it's absolutely impossible to ignore unless you crop it like that. That's a picture taken on the day. They got plenty of flaggetry, but somehow they missed the sign. And so what the right was shown about what happened that day was Sarah Palin and Ted Cruz had come, and I don't think they were actually invited. I think they just kind of like glommed on so that the media could pretend it was a right-wing Tea Party event. And then at the same time the right was shown this is what the left was shown in Salon and in Washington Post. So we're going to try and make the protesters look like racist rednecks. And I know that this guy is an agent provocateur, because after Park Police came and they took the sign down, and we went and we got to the tail end of the rally, everybody starts moving. And so now the veterans, so this is where it gets interesting. So now the veterans are going to go and they're going to march to the White House. Now this guy's 2 friends immediately start going, oh, hey, we're going to the White House. Everybody, we're going to the White House. We're going to the White House. And they begin trying to pull the crowd in the entire wrong direction. They literally tried to lead the crowd physically in the wrong direction, but it was the military. An officer steps up and he's like, no, we're going this way. And then everybody continues on the White House. Now, what you may or may not have seen is, so the protesters began tearing down the barricades with their bare hands. They lifted them above their heads, and they marched through Washington, D.C., carrying the barricades to the White House, and began slamming the barricades in a pile in front of the White House. In addition to slamming the barricades, and so now they're just literally making a pile in front of the White House. The Uniformed Secret Service begins kind of flipping out. At one point, well, first of all, let me back up. So we get to the White House, and my oldest son, who's 11, looks at me and he goes, "Dad, I don't think that they know it's organized crime." And I go, "Oh, no, they know it's organized crime." He's like, "Dad, no, I don't think that they know it's organized crime." And I'm like, no, they know it's organized crime. "No, Dad, I don't think they know it's organized." I'm like, "Come with me." So I take him. We go over to the first guard post that we walk up to, and it was a uniformed Secret Service guard post on the perimeter of the White House. And I look at the guy and I go, "Excuse me." And so everybody assumes I'm in the military because I have short hair and good posture, and like that was working for me kind of like in this, scenario. And I said, "Excuse me, I'm, here, with the protests and everything, and I got my sons. It's an educational experience." And I was trying to explain to him that government is just kind of organized crime. It's just organized crime, and he doesn't think that you guys know that it's organized crime. And I was wondering if you would help elucidate my son. And the guy looks at me, and he gets a big smile on his face. And he's like, "Well, I can't say anything," as he's like winking at my son. And I go, "Thank you, I appreciate it." And so I go, "Now are you?" He's like, "No, well, he was winking. I got that. Like, okay, we'll go to the next one." So we go to the next guard post at the thing, and I start the same thing, and we just start going around, and we hit 2 or 3. And some people wouldn't talk to us at all. Some people would say, "Yeah, the best were the Washington police. Yeah, we know it's organized crime. What do you want us to do about it?" And I'm like, "Thank you, officer. Like, I appreciate that you know it's organized crime." And so then after 3 or 4 either encounters with the Washington police that were there, the Park police, or whatever, I realized that they all know that it's organized crime. You can see it in their face. You can look right in their faces, and they know it's organized crime. So I decide to kind of shift up my tactics. So now we go to the next guard post along the post, and I say, "Officer," "I've been talking to all these guard posts and members of law enforcement, and all of you guys know that this is organized crime. By the way, there is now a full-fledged riot going on all around me." So now we were in the kind of the leading edge of the veterans. Now all the barricades have shown up. They're now slamming them down. They've surrounded the Secret Service, and some Secret Service agents, females, are crying, which has been censored out of the news, and I'll show you some examples of the censorship here in a second. At one point, they've got a group of Secret Service agents, the uniformed Secret Service, the kind of clean-cut kids that they clean up and present to the public as being the face of the government. They've got them surrounded at a fence, and they're yelling at them. They're calling them traitor. "How can you work for Obama? He's a socialist. You guys are scum." And they're like literally going off on this. So now the whole scene has turned into the veterans are pissed, and now they're at the gates of the White House. So I now switch up my tactics, and I go to the next one, and I go, "Hey, all you guys know that this is organized crime. You guys are law enforcement. You guys have the guns. You guys could do something about it. Who here among you is a leader?" And the guy's like looking, and he's really thinking about it. You can see it in his eyes. He's like, "Well, that's my boss over there, right over there. That's the incident commander." And so I go over to the incident commander. I go, "Understand that you're the incident commander. I've talked to all of these different guards around here. All of you guys know that this is organized crime. You've got the place surrounded. You've got the guns. Like, everybody knows it's organized crime. Why don't you guys do something about it?" He's like, "Well, I go, "Who are the leaders among you?" I kept asking, "Who are the leaders among you?" He's like, well, that's my boss, over there." So I go over to him, and I just start rotating around. At one point, I stand up in front of the entire crowd, and I'm like, "All of these guys know that this is organized crime. They just need to know that we know and that we support them." And like, people are like, "They don't know, they're idiots, they're dumb, they're too stupid to know that it's organized crime." And I'm like, "No, I've talked to them. They all know that it's organized crime." And so then they send in a uniformed park policeman who evidently they thought I was the leader, and they go, "Sir, we'd like to have a word with the leader of the protest, And I pick up my 9-year-old. I go, "Here's the leader. You want?" And my 9-year-old's like, "Dad, no." And so that guy went away, and so the situation kind of began to deteriorate, and we would just keep walking around to these different guard posts. Some of them would not talk to us. Some of them were freaking out. I mean, they were legitimately scared of everything that was going on around them. We went up to what looked like a plane, an unmarked FBI, vehicle, and I thought they were going to pull their guns on us. They were literally freaking out at everything that was going around them. They brought in the mounted troops and had them, kind of like trying to corral the crowd. And then they began bringing in the Washington D.C. Police Department in riot gear to sweep the street. And so now you've got probably 36 riot police that I went up to and tried to explain that it was organized crime, but they were freaking out too. They were like, "You better get," like they were seriously, did not want to take on these veterans. And at the same time that they're doing that, they're also. Oh, by the way, this is a disabled veteran carrying one of the barricades to the White House on a Segway, and you can tell he's a double amputee, and he was literally carrying it, on the way. So the other thing that they did is they tried to intimidate the crowd with snipers. So they take the sniper team that's usually on the top of the White House that stays invisible. It's called a counter sniper team. And they not only did they make them visible on the roof, but they had another counter sniper team that was suited up, evidently like it was shift change, whatever. It was at the kind of the back of the White House, and the veterans were literally flipping off the counter team, saying, "Fuck you! How can y'all work for Obama?" The veterans weren't intimidated. They weren't having any of it. Now, this is kind of interesting. So all this has been censored off of CIA Google, and So all this is if you Google snipers in White House and Million Vets March on Memorial on Google, somehow you don't get any pictures of that. But if you do the exact same search string on DuckDuckGo, you get plenty of pictures of the snipers on top of the White House. So this was what was going on. Now they're about to sweep the street. The police are freaking out, and then, damn it, here come the truckers. So there's there's a convoy of truckers, and just when I thought we were going to do it, this convoy of trucks come in, and it pulls like the main group to where the truckers have all pulled up, and the whole thing dissipates. And after it was over, it struck me that even though we didn't do it that time, we know the biggest secret of the Secret Service now. And the biggest secret of the Secret Service is that they know this is organized crime. And so I don't think that they know that you know that it's organized crime and that you're on their side and that you want them to do something about it. So now I'm going to switch up my tactics when I go to Washington, D.C. I'm going to go and visit the Secret Service and the Uniformed Secret Service, and I'm going to give them copies of my book, and I'm going to give them copies of my flash drive, and I'm going to encourage everybody once a month, let's say the anniversary month from today, to show up at the White House, and let's have a talk with the Secret Service, the Uniformed Secret Service, and tell them, hey, we understand, we know that it's organized crime. We want you to know that we have your back. We want you to know that we can arrest them together. We'll come together and arrest them, these criminals, and see what they say. Take a look at their eyes. Ask them if they know it's organized crime. See what they say back. And then, if enough people come, maybe we can all arrest them together. And if the Uniformed Secret Service doesn't do anything about it, maybe we can arrest them too. And that's the story of the Veterans March on Washington in 2013 and the biggest secret of the Secret Service. So I'll be down there on the 13th. I'll be down there on the 13th of next month, and I've got some books for the Secret Service agents, and we're going to expose it and show people what's up. And so I've got a little bit of time for questions if you want to see questions. Go for it. You can get books. I will be right over there right after the thing, and happy to sell anybody a book, Understanding Our Slavery. Yes.
How did you structure your book and
So the book is really an attempt to make what has been invisible visible. And so in my day job, I help Fortune 500 companies learn at the speed of light. Most people are visual learners. And so in the book, I use visualizations, I use media ownership charts, I use historical photos to expose the techniques that intergenerational organized crime has used in Nazi Germany, in Soviet Russia, in East Germany, and they're using the exact same techniques here in the United States. And when you see them next to each other, you can't unsee it. You very quickly realize, oh, this is a playbook. They're all using the same techniques. And I also use a lot of visualizations to make what was invisible visible. This is a media ownership chart that's in the book. I only have a fraction of it in the book. If I tell you that there are 6 media companies running hundreds and hundreds of subsidiaries to give you the illusion of diversity of opinion and diversity of information, you may or may not believe me, but if I show you a media ownership chart where you can see that News Corp right here at the top literally owns 175 newspapers, satellite things, television programming, television production, movie theaters, very quickly you realize, holy shit, there's 6 companies running hundreds of subsidiaries to control perception, and you kind of get it, and you come to a deeper understanding because you saw it with your own eyes, and you've made something that was invisible visible. This is another visualization from the book. So that first visualization shows you who owns the media, the physical means of production, the printing presses, the television stations, but how do you give hundreds and hundreds of journalists their marching orders across dozens and dozens and dozens of publications? Well, there are 3, this is another visualization, and this one shows 3 organizations, Bilderberg, Council on Foreign Relations, and Trilateral Commission, have maneuvered their membership into all of the key reporters and editorships. And that media control system is how you're able to sell Cover Up 9/11, you're able to sell the TARP, the TOLF, the bailout, or the next BS war on manufactured intelligence, because you've got to get them together to get meetings. These are the front organizations that get them together to give meetings. And by the way, Council on Foreign Relations and Bilderberg, Jeffrey Epstein was a member of both the Council on Foreign Relations and the Bilderberg Group. So not only do you have them controlling perception in the media, you have them controlling politicians in what was obviously a blackmail op. Obviously, they are getting politicians, prominent individuals, they're getting them in compromising situations with underage girls and boys. They're photographing them and they're using it as blackmail. And again, you see the same organizations. So on the old media side, which is television, radio, and print, you've got 6 companies running kind of hundreds of subsidiaries. On the new media side, you've got maybe 24 companies that have been funded to consolidate their own industries and control perception on what I like to call the DARPA internet. And so I'm an ex-networking guy. I used to build networks for Wall Street, for market data, trading floor technology. I've seen pictures of the DARPA internet. In fact, before it was the DARPA internet, it was the ARPA internet. And if you search DuckDuckGo for ARPA network map 1973-1974, you will find that in 1973-1974 they had hundreds of institutions on the internet. They had the internet way before they gave it to us. They had hundreds in 1973, 1974. I think they knew exactly the important companies, technologies, search, social media, what they needed to control perception. And so these companies have been financed to consolidate their own industries, have the best dominant platforms. Everything is free, except it's not free, because once you're on it, you're subject to their algorithmic manipulation. And so, and one of the things that I do in the book is I back everything up with an 8 gig flash drive that I call the Liberator. And half of the content is evidence of government and media corruption, where they've been caught lying and just making up news stories out of whole cloth, faking press conferences, making things disappear down the memory hole. And then half of it is the big secret that they don't want you to know, which is voluntarism, which is we don't need government. Everything that government does that's legitimate and non-redistributive could be done by the free market. It could be done by private companies, private charities. You wouldn't have the monopoly police. You would have ADT and West Tech competing for your business. And if West Tech was rude to you, then you could move over to ADT. If you wanted to, but that ADT guard, he would only be able to do what you have the ability to do, which is protect your life, liberty, and property. He doesn't have the ability to decide what habits you have or whether or not arrest you for gambling or smoking a plant, because you don't have that right. So you can't delegate a right you don't have to your security guard. So where do the monopoly police get the rights to do everything they do? They're just robbing society and stealing and doing whatever they want to do. And the thing that and once you expose that, where do we go? Well, the big secret is the world is a self-organizing place. It produces spontaneous order. And once we get government out of the way, I think the economy and society will flourish. This is one more example from the book. So the same three organizations, Council on Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission, and Bilderberg. It's not just the media. So this is a chart. It goes back decades. You're taking a look at the presidents, so I know it's hard to read, but just as an example, so in this column right here, Obama, Bilderberg. Clinton, Bilderberg, Council on Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission. Before him, there was George Herbert Walker Bush, Council on Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission. Before them, James Earl Carter, Council on Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission. Before Carter, Gerald Ford, Bilderberg, Council on Foreign Relations, and a 33-degree Mason. That control goes back decades, and it's presidents, vice presidents, the Federal Reserve System, Council on Economic Advisors, Import-Export Bank, IMF, major universities, major religious leaders. There's you name it. FBI, CIA, DOD, Joint Chiefs of Staff is on this chart. Going back decades, the Republican or Democratic administrations. That's the real quote-unquote government. That's the ruling structure. That's what never changes. Everything else you see is just kind of a television show because it's the media and the government working together. I mentioned Jeffrey Epstein, Bilderberg attendee, member of Council on Foreign Relations, member Trilateral Commission. So exact same, this is the organized crime system. These are the people. This should be the poster boy for the Council on Foreign Relations and Bilderberg. So how are they robbing us? Exorbitant banking profits. They're allowing fractional reserve banking, allowing these banks to create money out of thin air, even though it's inflationary and steals the value out of everybody else's money. Military procurement, unnecessary warfare, homeland security and police state spending, government monopoly privileges. If you're stealing trillions of dollars, what do you call the couple $100 billion you spend to control the media? It's the marketing budget. It's just the marketing budget. It's just a television show. And they're stealing so much that the money that it takes for them to control the media, it might as well be free. The couple $100 billion a year, because it's all, they've already bought it over this, over the year. Every time something pops up like a YouTube, they'll just stack money on the table until the company sells out. They bought YouTube for $1.6 billion when it had less than 100 employees and a handful of servers, because it was getting to eyeballs that they don't control. And that's the name of the game, control of perception. So the money that they spend to control the media, it might as well be free. I like to call it mice nuts. So what am I doing about it? I'm trying to expose it. I'm from a principled voluntarist perspective that government is illegitimate. So there's no real voluntarist think tanks in DC. There's nobody saying, hey, from the outset, government is illegitimate. If I don't have the ability to make up rules for you or steal your money, then I can't delegate a right I don't have myself to a representative or to a government. So if the rights didn't come from we the people, where do they come from? It's just BS. It's some stuff they taught us. They forced us to go to the mandatory government school, and they taught us it was legitimate that they get to rule us. And we want to push back from a principled voluntary perspective, and we want to target the media manipulation, the organizations that are controlling the media, controlling the narrative. And so the book and the flash drive are part of that. How do you bring it to people in a very visually compelling way? And so that's why I used the visualizations that I did. I can take one more, I think, probably. Anybody else? Yep.
So you seem to have done a lot of work in the activism space,
Mhm.
and I'm really glad that you're starting a think tank. But I'm curious, what keeps you so hopeful about being able to enact change in the U.S.? I myself come from a public policy background,
Mm.
and I've been, keeping up the fight on that end. But I honestly don't see a likelihood of any drastic change, at least in the U.S. So I was curious, why do you keep doing what you're doing,
Mhm.
and what keeps up your spirits?
So, everybody that saw the media panel yesterday, the reason that they're censoring us is because we're winning. They wouldn't be openly censoring us if we weren't winning. We're slowly and surely winning the battle of ideas. You don't have to win everybody. You really only have to win the meritocracy, the 5-10% of people that actually do things and create culture, and we're winning that battle right now. The Department of Defense is now censoring memes, and they're worried about mimetic warfare. My book is chock full of memes because the left and the right can't meme like we can meme. They're getting their ass kicked in the war of ideas, and so then the final thing that I'm doing is something. So I've recently moved to New Hampshire as part of something called the Free State Project. The Free State Project is a way of bringing voluntarist libertarians together, concentrating our efforts in one state. It was formed over a decade ago, and the idea was once the total membership of the group hit 20,000, everybody in the group would move to New Hampshire and would exert the fullest extent possible their efforts for liberty. They voted on a state. New Hampshire won in 2003. People began moving immediately, and right now there's over 5,000 people on the ground in New Hampshire, and they've been there for over a decade, and they've had an amazing amount of success. They have rolled back laws. They have gotten libertarians elected to the state house. They've elected over 45 libertarians to the state house in New Hampshire. They've got 25 that are serving there right now. And so they had 1,300 people sign last year, even though they knew it wasn't something that was going to happen in the future, that they now have to move within 5 years. So it is accelerating, and every single week more people land in New Hampshire. And so what my thesis is I have something that I call the Pre-State Project. And a pre-stater in New Hampshire is somebody that already lives in New Hampshire. And so, but supports the goals of the Free State Project. And so I think it might be easier to create pre-staters by exposing the illegitimacy of government and the criminality of government and how the media is censoring people than it is to get somebody to move to New Hampshire. So what my goal is to drop ultimately 100,000 copies of the book, the flash drive, and a DVD of Vaxxed in New Hampshire, supportive of the Free State Project, but as an independent effort so that they can keep their political thing, drive people to town hall meetings, and we just tell them and explain them what's happening. And then, by the way, not only is this what's going on, but look at all of your friends and neighbors that already know about it. And look, everybody's cool. Everybody's socks match. Here's all the evidence. Here's 8 gig evidence. We'll answer any questions that you have. And I think that we can achieve something called the 100th monkey effect, which is kind of the idea that once enough people in a kind of given geographic area kind of have the same understanding that the government is illegitimate or the government's criminal or whatever, that everybody just kind of goes, oh yeah, everybody knows the government's criminal, which, by the way, I've yet to have anybody go, no, the government, other than my 11-year-old, I haven't anybody go, no, it's not, this is not organized crime. And so everybody seems to get it intrinsically. And so now we can back it up with the evidence, but that's why I'm so optimistic, is whether it's the Liberator, whether it's the fact that we're broadcasting all the contents of the Liberator on the pirate box right now, and we're going to put 10 of those in New Hampshire schools to get around the algorithmic censorship of Google and the mainstream media. we are going to get around it. There's a technology revolution. There's no way that they're going to stop the signal. They may, there's absolutely no way they're going to stop the signal. So that's why I'm optimistic. I got time for one more, and then they're going to hook me. Go for it. Yeah, so 5G and Wi-Fi. I was just talking to Nate Henderson from Eat Sleep Crypto, and he pointed out that 5G is coming to Philadelphia, and they're going to have the kickoff at the Masonic Temple. I ain't saying it's the Masons, but it's the Masons. Anyway, that's it. That's my last question. I'll be over there if you want to get a book. Thank you very much for your time and your attention. Appreciate it. Yes. Thank you.
Yep, they're already on the laptop. Yep, they're in the desktop. And then I want to maybe just move this slightly and I'll
Wherever you want.
stand.
Social media influencer that has brought that sort of lifestyle to the blockchain through her being one of the greatest and most active users on that blockchain. And I'm sure she has a lot more to tell you about what I consider to be almost a more important element of crypto, the social aspect, and how we're going to socially appeal to people and make that the sort of the way that we get people in. It's too much of the focus is on investing and on other things and get rich quick kind of stuff. But I think the social element is what's really going to bring people in for the long haul. So without further ado, everyone, Lea Thompson.
All right, guys. So I'm going to start out by describing a super common scenario that happens, and you guys can let me know if this sounds familiar to you. So let's say that you are talking with a friend or a colleague, or you're in some kind of social setting, and maybe the topic of what you do or why you're going to Philadelphia for a conference comes up, and the topic of cryptocurrency comes up. And more and more people, yes, they are starting to become familiar with what is crypto and what is Bitcoin, but let's be honest, most people that you meet still really have no idea. And so when they ask you, oh, what is that? What is crypto? Most of us honestly tend to kind of word vomit on them about how it's decentralized and it's trustless and there's a distributed ledger and because we're so excited about it, right? And so that person goes from being genuinely like pretty curious to looking something like this. And I hate to break it to you guys, but most of us think that we look like this when we talk about crypto, and you really look like this. So what we're gonna be talking about today is just a couple of small, easy mindset shifts that you can take into these conversations that you have about cryptocurrency so that you can have these more impactful conversations. Because, I mean, it's easy, right? It's easy to nerd out on this stuff. We're excited about it. But what really is a nerd? Well, besides being a 4-letter word for a 6-figure salary, I define a nerd as someone who's just passionate about a particular topic. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, is having more open, curious, and meaningful conversations about cryptocurrency. And we're going to talk a little bit later on about why this actually matters and the impact that it can have on mass adoption. But the first question that we need to start out with is, why is crypto so hard to explain? Why is it that we have this tendency to kind of word vomit on people when we're talking about it? And it's because it's not just one thing. Like a cantaloupe is pretty easy to explain. It's literally a piece of fruit. But crypto can mean so many things to different people. Just like this ink blot. You could be seeing something completely different than the person sitting next to you, even though we're all looking at the same photo. And the same is true with cryptocurrency. You know, depending on who you ask and what they're excited about with the space and the technology, you could get a pretty different response. So crypto is a lot of different things, right? It's a digital currency, it's decentralized, there's proof of brain, proof of work, proof of stake, proof of everything. And so when someone asks you what is crypto or what is Bitcoin, then, I mean, how are you supposed to even know where to start, right? And so the problem, and where I think most of us go terribly wrong in these conversations, is that we think that when someone's asking us, what is crypto, that they're asking for a literal definition. And so it makes sense that we would try to give them this technically correct response. But what they're really asking is this something I should know about? Is this something that might have some sort of impact on me? And so instead of just going into a random rambling of things, I want to suggest maybe a slightly different approach. So I like to start out with just a really open-ended phrase. I like to start out by saying, well, crypto is a lot of different things, which is why it's so exciting. And this does a couple of things, because first of all, it diffuses that need in your brain to just kind of rattle off all the things about crypto. But it also really sets the tone for an open and conversational interaction. Now, what's really important, what I try to start all of these conversations with early on, as early as I can, is just to engage them back and to ask some sort of question. Because you really want to know, how much do they know? How curious are they? Like how deep is the water? You want to know that before you jump in. And so when I'm talking with people about crypto, people really respond to energy. And so when you say, hey, this is something that I'm really excited about, then that piques their interest. And they're like, oh, well, you know, if that's something you're excited about, then, you know, I might be kind of curious. And the question that I really like to start with, actually, is how much time do you have? Because I can either give you the quick and dirty explanation, or we can really get into it if you want, because it is something that I'm excited about. And so we've established that crypto is a lot of different things, right? And so we still haven't really answered their question, right? So where do you go from here? Well, since you just said you were excited, maybe you should start with what excites you. I don't know. And so pick the one or two things on this list, or in general about the space that really actually light you up the most. Because when you focus on that, then the conversation can just kind of easily flow. Now remember, they don't have to leave your casual conversation with a fully functioning understanding of cryptography. They don't need to fully understand things, but just focus on what excites you the most in those conversations. So a little fun fact about me is that I'm a competitive West Coast swing dancer, and I love to dance because it's just this really amazing connection that you get between your creativity and your body. And what's cool about swing dancing specifically is that it's a partner dance, and so you get to actually co-create that with another person, which makes it a really social activity, right? And so I've met a lot of my closest friends through the dance world. I call them my dance friends. You guys are my crypto and anarchy friends. And a lot of people in my life know that I dance, and so they would come up to me sometimes and be like, hey, like, I'm thinking of taking a dance class. I don't know, what do you think? Like, where should I go? What kind of dance should I learn? And you guys, I would get so excited, like it's almost embarrassing. Like I'd be like, oh, well, you should probably start with these 1 or 2 core dance styles because that's the foundation for frame and everything you're gonna need to learn. And don't worry, there's, classes happening every night of the week, and we'll find you, look at your schedule, put something in. And I mean, it was really intense. And I mean, don't judge me though, guys. I thought that I was getting another dance friend. But, these people, they would visibly kind of shrink away, and like they went from being actually kind of, curious about maybe learning to dance to feeling kind of overwhelmed and honestly really sorry that they asked me. And so I decided that I probably needed to change my approach a little bit if I, actually wanted them to maybe come to dance with me. And so now when people ask me that, I'd be like, there's this spot on Tuesday nights. It's my favorite place to go, and the people are just so friendly, and everyone just likes to get together and have fun. It's just a really great environment. I think you would like it, and you should come with me sometime. And so what's the difference between those two responses? Well, the first one, besides me being just a little overwhelming, is that it made it sound like it was kind of this exclusive club, and like you had to really be getting involved and practicing and doing things to be accepted. Where the second one, I didn't even talk about the activity. I didn't even talk about dance. I didn't say it's got the best teachers, it's got this, it's that. I focused on the core human connection reason of why they might be interested in going. I talked about how you can, everyone was friendly and it's this great place, and you can connect with people. And so how do we strip down talking about what we're excited about with crypto to the core human reason of why we're excited? And so let's say that the reason that you're most excited about crypto is to, get freedom from the strangleholds of government. Like, is that maybe the most relatable thing to say? In this room, yes, it definitely is. But I'm gonna take a guess that if you're having to explain like what even is crypto to someone, then that's probably not the most relatable thing for them. And so if the thing that you're excited about maybe isn't the most relatable thing to that person, then all you have to do is just peel it back one more layer and ask yourself why. Why is being free from the stronghold of government important to you? And if I were to answer that, I would say freedom. It's freedom to live my life how I want to do what I want, where I want, with who I want, to make decisions about my life without asking for permission from fucking legislators in Washington. That is my core reason, freedom. And freedom is a relatable human desire. And so we haven't even talked about anarchy yet. We think crypto's hard to talk about. Try talking to your friends about anarchy, right? So I went to my first Anarchadelphia this last year, And I'd been a longtime libertarian and Ron Paul supporter, but I didn't really know what anarchy was about. I knew what it meant from more of a textbook definition, but I didn't really have a lot of anarchists in my life that I could really understand what that community was about. So the first night that I'm down in the bar, hanging out, I was meeting up with a couple that I'd known in the crypto world for a few years. We never met in person before, so we're really excited to hang out. And he asked me, what is the difference between a libertarian and an anarchist? Because I explained, I'm just here to learn. I'm, just kind of curious more about this anarchy thing. And I thought he was going to go into some kind of, definition or, difference in philosophies. And he just turned to me and was like, 6 months. And so I have to say, he wasn't wrong. And in fact, I was feeling the bug by the end of that week. And so what was really interesting, though, coming back from Anarchadelphia is the conversations that I had with the people around me about anarchy, because they thought it was pretty weird that I spent my Mexico vacation going to an anarchist conference. And so we would be talking, and maybe I could say the word freedom or voluntarism and they would be fine, but I'd say the word anarchy and they'd kind of flinch almost like it was a bad word. And so I just started to ask a question, a simple question. We've talked about earlier, getting them engaged in that conversation with the question is so key. So I just started asking people, I was like, well, what does the word anarchy mean to you? And almost without fail, almost every single person describes something like this. And I'll have you know, this is not a group of anarchists, and it's actually a group of very friendly Canadians that were upset the Canucks lost the Stanley Cup. And so what was really interesting about that, though, is that as they would be describing these scenes of chaos, they would almost catch themselves and be like, well, I guess I don't really know what it means. And that, just having that question and having that conversation opened the opportunity for us to have this really interesting dialogue. And that one conversation completely shifted and opened their mind to maybe what anarchy is and what the movement is about. And so by having that impactful conversation, it was able to have more impact because I was talking with them. We were co-creating this conversation instead of me talking at them. Now, the reason that this matters so much, I'm going to give you an example. So, we all know people that are in some kind of MLM, right? I mean, thank you for the laugh. I appreciate it. And it's funny because you can almost, why do we get so turned off by these people? And again, if someone in the room is part of an MLM, I apologize if I'm offending you because I'm sure you're, not like that, or at least you're in denial about it. But, why do we get so turned off by these people? It's because we basically know they're going to try to sell us something no matter if we want it or if we need it. A lot of them do have great products, but they've got a response for every single thing you're going to say. So you're not really part of co-creating that conversation. They're not really being like, do you need Tupperware? But you're actually part of, a presentation that you thought was just a coffee date. And I'll stop slamming MLMs, I promise. And so let's say that you're talking to someone that maybe could care less, or they think it's stupid, or, maybe they even, use my favorite line, which is, well, isn't crypto just used by criminals on the black market? And so if you're talking to someone and they don't want to hear about your experiences and your life and what you're learning and what you're excited about, then they're not interested. So what? This movement is not necessarily a sprint. We're 10 years in and we still have a long way to go. Having these conversations with people that are excited to and are open and curious to learning is really powerful. So there's this, I'll give you an example of that. There's this dog trainer who's really famous for getting dogs to jump through hoops. And someone asked him once, what is your secret? How are you able to so consistently train these dogs? And he just replied, I pick the dogs that want to jump. So his whole secret to success was that he didn't waste his energy working with people that didn't want to learn. But what I'll say, I bet the other dogs that are just kind of hanging around the hoop, they're just kind of skeptical, they're not really sure. I bet after a while they're probably going to think that looks like fun, and they might want to actually join in. So why does any of this matter? Why is having these kind of mindset shifts where we can have these more open conversations with the people around us, what kind of impact could that actually have on the world of crypto? So I'm going to start with a quote from one of my favorite authors, Ayn Rand. One of yours as well, I would assume. Throughout the centuries, there were men who took first steps down new roads armed with nothing but their own vision. And this matters because the current systems let us down. People are enslaved in their own lives and they don't even really know it. Their mind hasn't been open to what a really amazing society, a free society could look like. Now, research shows that it takes someone hearing something at least 7 times before it even starts to kind of click, let alone them maybe even taking action on it, right? And so all of these experiences, they count and they matter. And so maybe someone heard about Bitcoin in the news, and then maybe one of their coworkers said that they just bought their first bit of Bitcoin, and then maybe they have this conversation with you. And we still, we were talking on the panel earlier about the curve of adoption, and there's a lot of factors that play into how long that curve takes, and there's just so many factors. But the one thing that every single person in this room can actually control and actually participate in very actively are having those conversations with the people around you. Like I was talking earlier about the conversations I had about anarchy, like that one conversation was enough to really open their eyes and at least shift their perspective to be more understanding of what that word encompasses. And so these experiences really do start to compound, and as you're going through your day and having these different conversations, they can make an impact, because social change doesn't often happen from some big marketing campaign or Super Bowl ad. It comes from people sharing their experiences and their knowledge with the people around them. For example, like 10, 15 years ago, you would have never seen organic food in a grocery store unless it was some kind of specialty shop, right? But now even Walmart has organic food because consumers got more conscious about what was in their food, and they started demanding better options, and slowly over time, you've seen that change happen in society. So let's do a little recap, okay? First of all, don't word vomit, people. Start with an open-ended phrase as well. And again, the phrase that I like to start with is just a really simple, crypto is a lot of different things, which is why I'm so excited about it. And then again, ask a question. Asking a question just to gauge how deep that water is. You don't want to be talking at them, you want to be talking with them. Engage them early and get them talking in the conversation. Next is, don't worry about covering the whole gamut and giving that whole technical definition. Just focus on the 1 or 2 things that really excite you the most. And then when you're talking about that, think about focusing on that core human emotion and the reason why you're excited. And then just remember that, again, it does take like 7 times of someone hearing something supposedly before it even starts to click. And so go low pressure, go slow. Again, just think about co-creating that moment together, and it'll just kind of flow from there. So if you do these things, people, I promise that you won't look like this anymore when you're talking about crypto. So mass adoption doesn't happen overnight, and social change doesn't always happen quickly, but the one thing that we all can impact is having these important and impactful conversations with the people around us. So, thank you.
One more time for Lea Thompson, everybody. Killed it. All right, so now we have a very tasteful. This is gonna be interesting. We shot this idea around to have these two guys come up at the same time. We didn't know how they were gonna take it, but apparently they're really good friends and they're gonna be excited. So who here saw Max Egan last night? Who here liked that shit? How about that, right? You want some more of that? All right, cool. Well, we're gonna bring Max Egan up here, and we're also gonna bring a very significant individual in at least me, Pat, and Sonny's ventures. We all met at this man's event, which is what this event is technically a fork of, and every other Anarcha event thereof. The man who started it all, Jeff Berwick, he will be joining us on stage shortly, and him and Max Egan are going to blow your fucking minds about crypto, about the 5G state, and about anything, because we'll open up the floor halfway through for questions. So if you guys got questions that you want to see two of them guys go at it, or give you their both very individual, unique perspectives, think that stuff up, and we'll get them up in approximately 2 minutes. So stay tuned.